During World War II, the Italian Navy formed a specialized unit known as the Decima Flotilla Mas, who would carry out one of the most daring naval sabotage missions of the war against the Allies in the Mediterranean. On December 19, 1941, under the cover of darkness, the Italian frogmen plunged into Alexandria harbor in teams of 2. Using human-operated submersible torpedoes, the Gamma Group used the submersible vehicles to attach limpet mines to the British warship HMS Valiant and the cruiser HMS Queen Elizabeth, who were both anchored off the heavily defended coast of Egypt. The Panerai watches they wore on their wrists, what would eventually be named the Luminor, played a crucial role in ensuring precise timing between the teams involved in placing the mines, and the Florence-based Panerai's partnership with the Italian Navy lay in secrecy for decades. In the 20th century, the watchmaking house also provided them with a slew of underwater instruments like compasses, sights, detonators, and gauges until they fashioned dedicated waterproof wristwatches known for their luminosity, making them purpose-built tools perfectly suited for the field. Littler known still was Rolex's involvement with Panerai's manufacturing during the 30s and 40s. Very few European watchmakers this early on had the engineering chops or the facilities to put together such a hard-wearing, waterproof case as the Luminors, so it's really no surprise that Panerai leaned on Rolex for help, as Rolex had cracked the code with the waterproof Oyster case in the mid-1920s. New to the dive watch arena, Rolex's prowess lent credibility to Panerai's watches and proved exactly what the watchmaker needed to meet the stringent requirements of the military contacts the Italian Navy set in place. Their wartime success ushered Panerai into the post-war era, where their focus shifted from military application to civilian tools, and only until the early 90s did Panerai actually make the Luminor available to the public, a project pushed by Panerai designer and lead engineer Alessandro Betterini. Penchants of the modern Luminor included a smaller, more wearable 44mm case size, and they brought back something they thought the public had no interest in: the crown guard, which almost certainly is one of Panerai's most recognizable and beloved design motifs. What we're looking at today is one of the latest Luminor Marinas, and it stands as one of the most popular Panerai offerings, gradually improved with each iteration since it debuted in the 90s within the Luminor collection. It can be a bit of a puzzle trying to deconstruct the differences between each Panerai model, since all 4 current Panerai collections, the Submersible, the Luminor Q, and the Radiomir, all use the same cushion case shape, and to make it even more confusing, almost all Luminor models use the small seconds at the 9 o'clock. So why are we taking a look at the Luminor collection over the others? And more specifically, why the Luminor Marina? We think Panerai sums it up rather well on their .com, as the Luminor collection banner image reads, "The essence of Panerai." That's it, the Luminor, more specifically the Luminor Marina, but any Luminor for that matter. It's the perfect gateway drug for the rest of the Panerai catalog, as it maintains a blend of quintessential old-world Panerai craftsmanship and ethos with top-tier 21st century chronology. To discuss Panerai is to discuss the cushion case shape. There exists a number of watchmakers who use a cushion case, but almost all tip their hat toward Panerai. We just asked why the Luminor over the other Panerais to examine first, and well, it all starts with the case. The essence of Panerai we interpret to mean the Luminor combines the best parts of the older Radiomir, that is the bedrock design cues like the cushion case shape, the wire lugs, and the dial layout with the hard-wearing, utility-first crown guard of the Submersible. The Luminor Marina uses the best of both. Not only was Rolex responsible for the mechanical engineering behind Panerai's collaboration with the Italian Navy, but they can also thank the crown for the cushion case shape, as Rolex fashioned this first in the 20s before Panerai adopted it and made it popular. The Luminor Marina, reference PAM 1312, uses a 44mm stainless steel cushion case with excellent finishes, like the contoured brushing that curves with the case's corners, high polished for the fixed sloping bezel, and of course the execution of the crown guard. With its 15.5mm case thickness and 53.5mm lug-to-lug, this is most certainly a watch that wears on the larger side, although we would consider it to be more wearable than Panerai's of yesteryear. We found it felt right at home here on our wearer's larger wrist, measuring in just shy of 8 inches. AISI 316L 1.4441 is Panerai's stainless steel of choice, and it's heralded for its high corrosion resistance, making it a great choice for diving, as would be expected of a watch previously designed in mil-spec fashion. Now, the Luminor Marina comes equipped with 300 meters of water resistance, but it does so by protecting the case with a push-pull crown. Seems paradoxical, but of course, we have to take into account the crown guard, which builds in a nifty locking system to keep the crown in its place and protected when not intended for use. First, there's the actual guard itself, and that's really just a half-moon-shaped piece of brushed stainless steel that prevents the crown from getting snagged on anything and deployed on accident. Within the guard is an extra measure of protection via a hinge-like lock mechanism that, when closed, applies direct contact pressure on the front surface of the crown to keep it watertight. You'll also notice the REG TM engraving on the front face of the guard, and it's just an indication of Panerai's unique patent that dates back to 1959 and is one of the Luminor's only controversial features. Some say it's a vintage nod and true to form. Some say the guard would look too stark without it, while others argue they'd prefer a cleaner presentation. We don't mind it, it's not in any way conspicuous or showy, and it almost disappears in certain lighting conditions, since the engraving is blind. On the 180, Panerai keeps the case back conservative, with a simple brushed screw-down unit with a wave-like pattern on the periphery and some simple smiling text. The other notable difference between the Radiomir and the Luminor is the shape of the lugs. For example, on the Luminor Marina, the lugs are substantially thicker than the wire lugs found on the Radiomir. It also adds a good deal more toughness to both the look and feel of the case, as well as some vintage cues, since the lugs are drilled. All the way back in the 1910s, right about the time of the First World War, Panerai had a breakthrough by using a radium-based emulsion to emit light at depth. The radioactive reaction allowed Panerai to paint a backplate with this substance, and then use a plate just above, with punch-outs for the areas in which they wished the dial to glow, numerals and markers, to achieve the lume effect. In just a few decades, the world got a lot smarter and realized that strapping a radioactive material to the wrist was not in the best interest of the wearer. Panerai engineers went back to the drawing board and came up with an even better substitute, a tritium-based product. Radioactive still, but significantly safer than radium, as the element emits only a very weak beta particle. In any regard, the newest Luminor Marina uses a similar system. Look closely, and the luminous backplate design with the punch-out system is still employed for the Arabic numerals, markers, and the subdial at the 9 o'clock. The rest of the lume is applied to the front surface of the dial, like usual, inset with the baton-style handset, and the blue small seconds hand, which leads us to the subdial. Both the placement at the 9 and the absence of a central seconds in general is a hallmark of Luminor, and Panerai at that. In keeping with the naming convention, this particular small seconds hand is coated in an ocean-esque blue and keeps time by way of 12 very small indices. On the opposite end of the dial, adjacent to the 3 o'clock, is a small date punch-out with the same black lume color scheme as the rest of the dial. All of the dial's quirky elements, like the trio of large rounded Arabic numerals and the background which we just spoke to, are housed under a high-domed sapphire, with spades of anti-reflective properties for a clean viewing experience. In 2005, the world saw Panerai's first in-house movement. As we mentioned previously, the successful relationship between Rolex and Panerai, and partnerships with a few others sprinkled in between, proved sufficient for Panerai's watches for decades. However, becoming vertically integrated was the next step in their progression. Now, we're starting to see the fruits of their labor, with some impressive feats. Inside the Luminor Marina ticks the P9010 caliber, an automatic mechanical movement with over 200 different parts, a 3-day power reserve, 72 hours, stored in 2 barrels, a 28,800 bph beat rate, and a proprietary shock resistance system called InkaBlock. InkaBlock is a very simple component that's been around since the late 1930s. Obviously, it's been refined since, but the idea is that this very small, thin, harp-shaped addition over the jewel on top of the balance wheel builds in some flexibility. So, when there are shocks or bumps, it acts as an absorber, allowing the components to accommodate stress and not break in the process. Even though the Panerai-Rolex partnership isn't as extensive as it once was, the P9010 caliber uses a similar Glucidur balance wheel. Glucidur is a unique alloy created by combining beryllium, copper, and beryllium bronze iron, and maintains a unique pension for minimal thermal expansion. For a moving metallic part, this is paramount for longevity. In terms of accuracy, the P9010 caliber is rated at just a few seconds of deviation, plus or minus per day, within COSC spec, but the movement is not officially COSC rated. Panerai offers a few very premium 24mm options for securing the Luminor Marina on the wrist. We got our hands on the calf Ponte Vecchio leather strap in a deep black with beige edge stitching and a set of stainless steel buckle hardware. But there are dozens of other color options and materials like alligator, rubber, recycled PET fabric, and a stainless steel bracelet that uses a mix of brushed and high-polished finishes mirroring the main case. The calf Ponte Vecchio leather strap feels right at home with the highbrow nature of the case and overall attention to detail on the Marina. And we have to say, this is just going to get even more comfortable with time as it breaks in and form fits to the wrist. So, no complaints here. Where other luxury watch manufacturers tend to sometimes skim on this detail, Panerai knocks it out of the park. We are going to preface this by saying that we're big fans of the Luminor Marina. In our opinion, it does mix in everything great about the brand, but Panerai hasn't been immune to their fair share of criticism. From the lack of progress and innovation in the movement space, enthusiasts have taken a hard look at their watch's values knowing that they used off-the-shelf movements. There was also a bit of controversy with the movement's branding, which had many questioning whether the legitimacy of their in-house claims were even valid at all. There's also plenty of enthusiasts who just don't appreciate the look and feel of a large 44mm hyper-industrial watch, when the whole watchmaking world seems staunchly obsessed with smaller vintage-inspired case sizes. So then, who is the Panerai Luminor for? A few things to keep in mind. First off, history buffs should swoon. Even though their military heritage isn't as well known and outwardly marketed as other Swiss watchmakers, the Radiomir and Luminor in particular have some of the most fascinating wartime heritage in the game. Second, anyone looking for a luxury watch with a cushion case around $10,000. That kind of sounds obvious, like we're just explaining what the Luminor Marina is, but once you start looking for other options, you'd be hard-pressed to find something as good as the Luminor Marina. Third, and finally, for anyone who wants a sports watch but doesn't want something classically shaped on the wrist. That is, you want something industrial, but something that also sets yourself apart from the average watch-wearing crowd. If that's you, you should certainly dive a bit deeper with Panerai. Alright, well that's it for us today. As always, we love a good discussion, so if you have any thoughts on the Luminor Marina, drop us a line below. Please be sure to like and subscribe, and we'll see you next week.